Hey, what is up guys, Mergaman4 here, and today I'm going to be talking about the newest episode of Doctor Who, Wild Blue Yonder. After last week's more traditional episode of Doctor Who, RTD decides to take us off on a journey to the edge of the universe and delivers something just extremely bizarre and mad and utterly brilliant. Yeah, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. This is a very unique episode of Doctor Who, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's a story that isn't afraid to just be kind of out there and do some really weird things, but also to be a bit more of a character study. Last week was more about the monsters, and we do get some monsters here, but it's more about reflecting the Doctor and Donna back at themselves, quite literally, and delving into who they are and their relationship with one another. And I really love that opening and closing scene aside, this is entirely a two-hander between David Tennant and Catherine Tate. It's no secret that both of them are superb actors, but this really pushes them to their limits and allows them to stretch their acting abilities. But first, why don't we just briefly touch on that kind of bizarre pre-credits sequence. Now, the scene itself isn't too bizarre. It's a brief little comedy scene meeting a historical figure. It's pretty standard for Doctor Who, but what is bizarre about it is that aside from introducing an admittedly quite funny running gag, it has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the episode. And I mean, even in terms of tone, it's completely different. And while it is an enjoyable scene, and I do quite like the running gag of the Doctor and Donna accidentally changing the word gravity to mavity, I will admit that I hope this does have a stronger payoff later down the line. I don't really know what that would entail, but it just feels so disconnected from the rest of the story that I do almost wish we had jumped right into it. Speaking of, one of the things I really appreciated going into this episode was that I knew next to nothing about it. And this was very intentional by the production team. They really wanted to have an episode that even the most hardcore fans could go into pretty much blind, because let's be honest, if you are an avid Doctor Who fan and you do spend a lot of time online, on forums like I do, you become aware of a lot of things beforehand. Obviously there are leaks, but honestly, not even talking about leaks, you learn stuff like casting and locations and even just the basic premise, which is all even involved just in general promotion of the show. But even spending as much time online as I do, going into this episode, I knew nothing except that this was set on a faraway spaceship and there was a robot. And that was pretty much it. So it was a lovely feeling going into an episode without any idea what to expect. The closest I've probably ever come to that before was Series 11, and there were a couple of episodes there which I knew hardly anything about, but this was that taken to an extreme, and it just really added to the whole unnerving aspect of the episode, that feeling of going out into the unknown where no one else has been before. It felt very thematically significant, and I know a lot of fans were expecting the secrecy, especially being a 60th anniversary special, to be about hiding the involvement of past doctors or companions or villains. I wasn't expecting that personally, and I am kind of glad that that wasn't the case, because I think what we got was a very strong standalone adventure that really just stuck to its core ideas and did it really well. I also really appreciate that RTD takes the TARDIS and the sonic screwdriver out of the action for pretty much the whole episode, meaning the Doctor and Donna have to purely rely on their wits. I mentioned last week that I was feeling like the sonic screwdriver's new abilities were kind of making it a little bit overpowered, so I'm really glad that they took a step back this week and removed it from the equation. At the very least, it is reassuring to me that RTD is definitely willing to set the sonic screwdriver aside, even if he doesn't want to get rid of it completely. And I love the setting of the episode on this massive abandoned spaceship at the very edge of existence. where there aren't even any visible stars. It's incredibly unsettling. That feeling of there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide, and no one knows what's out there. And that couldn't be better demonstrated by the villains of the episode, the Not Things, which take on the form of the Doctor and Donna in their quest to enter the universe properly and wage war against it. I have always been a fan of Doctor Who that isn't afraid to just do crazy things, to deliver on the unknown. I love that we don't really get a lot of answers about these creatures, exactly what they are or exactly what their limits are. And that sort of thing is far more terrifying to me than your kind of just traditional scary monster designs. And giving the opportunity to David Tennant and Catherine Tate to play more evil versions of themselves is a lot of fun too. As is, of course, seeing the production team playing around with all the possibilities of these creatures that are learning about form and shape for the first time, with their big arms and their beastly forms and expanding to fill whole hallways or melting into the floor. There's a lot of fantastic visual imagery here that's just so wacky and weird and just strange. And that's exactly what I love. It's getting to that part of your brain that's trying to process and understand these things, and it's hard to wrap your head around it because they're so deliberately absurd, and that just makes the whole thing so much freakier. These villains strike that perfect balance for me between a lot of fun to watch but also really terrifying, because it is fun and funny seeing these sorts of strange images, but at the same time, the story doesn't treat it as funny. I mean, you know it's funny, but it treats it with this earnestness. And combined with the more psychological aspects, as the Doctor and Donna try and deal with figuring out if they're with the real one or the fake, it offers a lot of great dramatic opportunities. One of my favorite scenes of the episode is when the Doctor ends up with the fake Donna and is trying to figure out if she's real. And in the process, she ends up really digging into his head and bringing up some of the recent things he's been through. The fact that he learned he's not really from Gallifrey, the fact that the flux had been unleashed because of his actions, and bringing that to the surface, something that he's so far refused to acknowledge and talk about. And he finally becomes vulnerable, opens up, openly discusses how he's feeling about these things, and it turns out to be a trick. And David Tennant just sells that raw emotion so well. The fact that he doesn't want to talk about it. He wants to pretend it doesn't exist and just move on from it. But you can see the relief that he feels being able to tell his friend, and the utter horror at realizing that it wasn't actually her at all. In fact, seeing the Doctor so utterly horrified is really jarring, because we're not used to seeing him this scared. We're not used to seeing him lack the understanding of what's going on, and that's so terrifying. And I love too that once they've saved the day and he finally has a moment with the real Donna, he continues to shut her out and not open up about it. He's damaged, and he doesn't want to lay the burden of that on his friends. The other fantastic thing about these monsters is, as they're copying the Doctor and Donna, they also have a mental link, and they're able to connect with their current thoughts. And because of that, they're limited in the actions they can take, because as soon as they think, the villains know it too. It's a rare instance of using the Doctor's great intelligence against him, and I think that's really clever. There's also a moment right near the end where the ship is about to blow up, and the TARDIS has returned to rescue the Doctor and Donna, and the Doctor chooses the wrong Donna. Now, this is a fantastic idea, one that has a huge amount of dramatic potential that isn't utilized at all. The Doctor pretty much figures out that he's got the fake right away and goes right back for the real Donna, and it's just kind of baffling to me, because that's a really cool concept. The Doctor saving the wrong person and potentially even having the real Donna die, the episode plays out as if that's what's going to happen. And in fact, despite not being convinced by the fake out death in the Star Beast, I was almost convinced that they might kill Donna off here because of all the secrecy around the episode. I thought, is this why they kept it a secret? Because they're killing off Donna, and the Donna that's in the giggle is actually a fake? That's a really awesome storytelling opportunity. And on the one hand, obviously, I understand why they wouldn't have gone through with it, because that is an incredibly bleak death. Way more bleak than if she had died from the meta crisis. But at the same time, that has so much incredible dramatic potential that it almost feels like a really wasted opportunity now. Especially because, as I say, they didn't really do anything with the fake out. At least last week, I wasn't a fan of the fake out, but we got a really great scene between the Doctor and Donna, and the death scene itself was very well played. Whereas here, we gain nothing from the fake out. You could just snip it out and have them take the real Donna, and you don't really lose anything. So that's probably the one major thing I took issue with in the episode. It doesn't really hugely affect things overall, but yeah, every time I watch that now, it just doesn't sit right with me. It just feels like such a waste. But that thought doesn't stick with me for long because, of course, the Doctor and Donna get back in the TARDIS and go back home to Earth, and who else do they meet but Wilfred Mott in the very last scene that Bernard Cribbins was able to film before he sadly passed away. And oh, it's just impossible to watch this without a massive grin on your face, to see Wilf back, even for such a short amount of time, reunited with the Doctor. It's simply wonderful. This does also quickly segue into a cliffhanger leading into the giggle, where everyone starts going absolutely crazy. There's planes crashing and explosions. And I will admit that did feel rather jarring to me. I didn't feel like there was a proper build-up to it, and it did feel kind of strange to me that Wilf was just sitting out there in the open, completely unprotected, and conveniently all the madness starts happening right after Wilf mentions that the world needs saving. It just felt kind of awkward to me, but I'm going to forgive it because it's just so wonderful seeing Wilf again. And while I'm sad that we won't be able to get what was planned for his appearance in the giggle, I am glad we got one more scene with him. And yeah, rest in peace, Bernard Cribbins. What a wonderful actor and what a wonderful character. But with all that said, despite a couple of minor criticisms, I really, really enjoyed Wild Blue Yonder. It was a great deal of fun, had a huge amount of tension and unnerving material, and it was just a really unique episode of Doctor Who. It's strange and not ashamed of it, and it really couldn't be more different from the Star Beast in that regard, and I love it for it. So for that, I'm going to be giving Wild Blue Yonder an 8.5 out of 10. I often feel that RTD at his most experimental tends to be RTD at his best, so I hope we're going to get more stuff like this in Ncuti Gatwa's era. But in the meantime, next week we have The Giggle, David Tennant's last story as the Doctor again, and the introduction of Ncuti Gatwa, and of course the return of the Celestial Toymaker. So there's going to be a lot happening. I'm very excited for it. And I'll see you all next week with my review of The Giggle.